All right, welcome back. We are in the midst of our series, The 5 Lessons 2025 Try to Teach You. And this is lesson number 2 of number 5, right? And maybe 6, because I got a 6th one that I feel like is brewing a little bit. Okay. Just as a little bit of a recap, the number one reason why we are doing this series is because most of what will stop you in 2026 are problems you did not solve in 2025. Okay. The goal here is to increase your awareness, right? We know that life is busy and noisy, and our brains are actively working against us. Trauma lies to you, it distracts you. We got all these things that are actively working against us. So if we just increased our awareness, we would then take different action and make different decisions. Okay. So that's our goal. As I help you increase your awareness, then you can choose which of these lessons, if any, are things that you want to apply and what you want to do about it. Okay. This is going to set you up for actually reaching the goals that you set for 2026 and not just setting them. Okay. As a reminder, it's the hashtag the couch, right, on Facebook, right? And every month we give out an opportunity for free coaching and an opportunity for reduced coaching. So make sure that you're using that hashtag. We'd love to hear, your takeaways and whatnot. All right. So lesson number 2, right, in our series is all about alignment. And probably a better way to say this is misalignment. So let me start us off with a couple of questions. Why does it take so long to reach your goals? What are the things that are causing delays? Like, does it have to take as long as it's taking? I mean, think about the things that you desire most, right? Most of the entrepreneurs want the same things: consistent revenue, time freedom, financial freedom, impact, et cetera, right? Think about those things that you deeply desire. Do you have them? Right? A lot of times when I talk to entrepreneurs, the answer is no. Now, it might not be a direct no. It might be kind of a little bit sometimes, but at the end of the day, the answer is no. Okay, that's fine. There's no shame about that. We might be in a season where our revenue is not as consistent, or we might be in a season where, we're spending a little more time in the business and don't have as much time freedom. Not having it is not necessarily the problem. The problem comes when I ask the second question, which is, well, how long have you wanted these things? How long have you gone without these things? And when I start talking about how long, that's where the misalignment becomes very apparent, because it's like, well, I mean, I've had my business for 7 years. I don't know that my revenue's ever been consistent. Oh, okay. Or, I've had my business for 7 years and I've really always been tethered to the business. I don't know that I've ever had time freedom. Hmm, okay. Or, yeah, I've had my business for a decade, but, my 401k is not where I want it to be, or my retirement is not where I want it to be, or my debt is not paid off, et cetera, right? One of the biggest ones is impact. And it's like, what I actually want is to be changing a system. What I actually want to be is, impacting thousands of lives in X, Y, and Z way. Okay, well, why we don't have that? I go back to my first question. Does it take that long? And some things literally do take a long time, but many of the goals that we set for ourselves do not. They literally do not have to take so long. So why do they? That is the thing that we are addressing. Okay. The longer you go without the things that you deeply desire, the more out of alignment that you are. That's what I want you to hear. We need to be honest about the fact that we are out of alignment in some areas of our life or some areas of our business. Why? Because we want blank and we don't have blank, and we haven't had blank for a long time. Okay. And I think sometimes it's because we confuse, like, where we should be tolerating and where we should not. Right. And the way that I like to explain this is that there are some things that we need to accept. Right. And when we start talking about accepting, we're accepting things that are required in order to get to what we want. So, for example, there might be some things that we don't want to do, like we don't want to market because what? I just want to deliver. I just want to transform lives. That's what most of my clients, they come at from being a practitioner in something, being an expert in something. And so the part that they love the most is actually doing the work. They don't really love the business part that much. Right. And so from that perspective, there are certain things that we need to accept because they are non-negotiable. Right. But then there are these other things that we're also accepting, but it's really tolerating, because tolerating is when you accept things that are not required. Oh, I need to push 42 pieces of content every day in order to sell my offer. That's not required. Who told you that? Oh, I need to be on 4 platforms. That's not required. Not required. And so when I started thinking about why is it like this? Right? Why does it take so long? Right? Why do we not have the things that we deeply desire? Right? And 2 things. Number 1, we are so busy that we barely even notice. I mean, we have our moments where we notice. We have our moments where it becomes painful. Like usually when we need something and we don't have it. Right? So, let's say we have a parent who gets sick and we really want to be, more present, but we don't have time freedom. In that moment, it's very apparent. But on a day-to-day basis, we're not as aware. Right? People don't see not having what they want as out of alignment. People don't see how they're tolerating and how they're settling. People don't see how they've stopped believing that what they want is possible. That's one of the biggest reasons that I see when I see people that are that are in misalignment, is that they're just so busy that they don't notice. They're in avoidance. Right. But the second reason that I see is that sometimes we do know. Sometimes we are keenly aware. Sometimes we are painfully aware, but people are just settling. Right. They're just settling. Yeah, I know I don't have time freedom. I know I don't have, wealth. Maybe I have income, but I don't have wealth. I don't have riches. Right. I'm not at the levels that I want to be at. Right. But I've just accepted that, it just kind of is what it is, or it's going to take a long time, or. Right? These are the 2 biggest reasons. These are the 2 biggest things that I want you to be assessing for yourself. Which of these are contributing to me not having what I want, i.e., being out of alignment? Because the result of this is that we end up doing the wrong things. We end up building the wrong things, the wrong business, the wrong relationship, the wrong habits, etc. Right? That's what happens when you're either not aware or not accepting. And when I started to dig a little deeper, and it's like, well, why is that? Why are we so busy and not aware? And why are we just settling and, living in survival mode? And one of the biggest reasons is that people just will not give themselves permission to dream. Right? People don't, they just have life has like beaten them down, and they will not give themselves permission to go after what they deeply want. Right? Whether it's I want to be in a healthy, loving relationship, or I, you know, don't want to market on social media, or, some of the things that we deeply desire, we've just kind of given up on, or we just don't believe that they're possible. Oh, I don't believe it's possible to just be on one platform, because that's what I really want. I really don't want to be on all these platforms. It's very tiring. It's exhausting. Right? So I don't want to be on all those platforms. So, but I got to. I got to do it because that's how you become successful. And what it really comes down to is that you're just not doing the thing that you deeply desire. Oh, Stephen Pressfield has a great book called "Put Your Ass Where Your Heart Wants to Be." Like that's in essence what we're talking about here. Is that in the book he talks a lot about putting your ass where your heart wants to be, the first part of the sentence, right? And just being consistent and fighting through resistance and blah, blah, blah. But what I'm actually focused on as it relates to this lesson is the second part of that sentence. Where does your heart actually want to be? How do you want to market? How do you want to deliver? What kind of money do you want to make? And whatever the answers to those things are, put yourself in those places. That's what I want you to hear. One of the biggest places where I see people kind of losing themselves in entrepreneurship is this is a great example. Let's say you are an impact person, right? A lot of my clients are impact driven. They're, helpers by nature. They often come from helping professions, not always, but many times. But they have a heart to help people, is my point, right? But despite that being the core of who they are, they've gotten lost in building the business, right? Most of this has just been about making the money so I can pay my bills and, stay afloat, right? It can be challenging to balance making money and making a difference, right? But it comes back to our core principle here. You have to learn to put your ass where your heart wants to be. So if I'm an impact driven person, then I need to be building an impact driven business. And it's like, okay, well, what does that look like? Figure it out. What does impact mean to you? Right? What does that look like? For my clients, a lot of times it looks like changing a system. But then we have to come right back up to not believing, because even when we know what we want, we push it down because of fear. And it's like, I can't change a whole system. Why not? Why not, friend? Helen Keller changed all kinds of things in the disability world, and she was blind and deaf. What do you mean? You got all that education, all that mobility in your body, all these gifts and talents, and you mean to tell me you can't? Sure, you can. But we've lost the ability to dream. That is what has gotten in our way. And so sometimes we are out of alignment in a minor kind of way, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I built this beautiful business and it's pretty successful. It's doing pretty good in lots of ways, be it team, money, impact, blah, blah, blah. But something kind of feels off just a little bit. We call this mission drift, where we're just kind of slightly off course. We're kind of slightly astray. And then other times we're completely out of alignment. We're nowhere near where we want to be. Okay. And I think this is also where people get stuck in what we call the wilderness season, where, again, something was supposed to be a season and it turns into a cycle. And one of the biggest reasons for this is because trauma changes us. When I say trauma, negative experiences, replace trauma with negative experiences. One of the things that I'm going to be talking a lot about throughout this podcast is entrepreneur trauma. We talk a lot about with our clients, but it could be anything from a launch that doesn't go the way we planned, to a client complaint, to changes on a platform. One of the biggest ones that I see is people who have built successful businesses. Let's say they've already built a six-figure or multiple six-figure business, and then they've gone back and gotten jobs, right? And there's nothing wrong with it going back and get a job, but the problem that happens is it becomes a traumatic experience. Even if they enjoy the job, even if they work through, any initial resistance, the problem is when it comes time to jump back into entrepreneurship, because that's actually where their heart wants to be, they're risk adverse. They're second guessing themselves. They're filled with shame or fear or all of these different things. That's what I mean by trauma changes you. And when that happens, right, when trauma changes us, what happens is that we ultimately learn the wrong lesson, right? There was a lesson for us to learn, but what we often do is we learn a lesson that has to do with shame. It has to do with us being bad in some way, right? When really the lesson that it was trying to teach you has more to do with what you need or what the business needs in order to thrive. It has far less to do with, oh, I can't believe I'm in this spot, which is what, our brains tend to do to us, right? And so we just get stuck because we're telling ourselves the wrong story. And so I just want to offer this to you, okay? Leave fear in 2025. Alignment requires courage. I talked about this in episode 1 just a little bit, right? That 2026 is asking for you to be courageous. It is not asking for your commitment, your competence, your creativity, your consistency. Yes, those things are needed, to be clear, right? But they're not more important than courage, my friend. The number one thing that it's going to take for you to be rich for you to be fulfilled, for you to be happy, for you to have the material things that you want, etc. It's courage. That's what I want you to hear. And really, when we start talking about alignment, it is around accepting what you desire, accepting what you want, and then making those things non-negotiable. What we do is we make them optional. It would be nice if I could market this way, or it could be nice if I offered this, or it could be, right? It's like, yeah, but how do you make it non-negotiable? These are the things that I desire the most. We don't have enough standards. Our standards are not high enough for our own self. We're always trying to put standards on other people, but not necessarily for ourselves. The key here is that you have to learn to have enough courage to commit before you know the how, before you know the when, before you know the what. The only thing you need at this point is to say, I'm not leaving 2026 without some of the things that I desire. I might not end 2026 with every single thing, right, that I deeply crave, but I'm going after what it is that I want. I'm going to put my ass where my heart wants to be. Because alignment is not binary. It's not I'm in alignment or not in alignment. It is to what degree am I in alignment? Alignment is not stationary. It moves. What you wanted 6 years ago is probably not what you want today, which means you have to be assessing, right, your alignment, the level in which of which you're in alignment regularly. For our people, we do this quarterly. Okay. You have to practice aligning so that way you can stay in alignment. Okay. So if you need help with this, we have a free lead magnet that kind of starts you off with this whole alignment process. You can DM me on Facebook. There might be a link somewhere around here. Also, that will help you. It's free. It doesn't cost you nothing. At least now, not for now. There might be some point where we, you know, turn it into a low ticket thing. Or you could just DM me, right? And talk about the program that we have that helps people with all of this kind of stuff. Either way, this is your lesson for number 2. We are leaving misalignment in 2025, friend.